Welcome back. In this video, we're going to continue our investigation of Descartes' meditations by looking at the skeptical challenge that's posed by his first meditation. We're going to start by reviewing what Descartes' project is and the methods he's going to use. Then we'll talk about skeptical hypotheses. What are they? What's their purpose? And then we'll talk about two that come up in the first meditation, that of illusions and dreams. So Descartes begins the meditations by noting that many of the things he grew up believing turn out to be wrong. And so he worries that, well, what about his current beliefs? What if they just turn out to be wrong in the future? So he sets out to rebuild a stronger and more secure system of scientific and religious beliefs. In order to do this, he's going to go through two stages. The first stage is the destruction part, where he attempts to sort of bulldoze all his beliefs away so that the only things that survive are the things that he knows for certain to be true. Then once he's done that, he can start building things back up. He can take the knowledge that survives that first stage and use it to rebuild his beliefs on a much stronger foundation. But to help discover a strong foundation for his beliefs, he needs some bulldozers to do the destruction. And this comes in the form of the method of doubt. And this is a policy of withholding belief from any claim for which we can find any reason to doubt. So notice, he's not just going to doubt claims for the sake of doubting them. He's only going to give up a belief and doubt it if he can find a reason to doubt it. Well, what would give us a reason to doubt a belief? This is where skeptical hypotheses come in. These are meant to provide those reasons for doubt. A skeptical hypothesis is a concrete example of a possible situation where someone holds a belief, but that belief is actually false in the situation. Let me give you an example. I look out the window and I see a yellow bird and I say, "Look, it's a canary." You ask me, "Why do you believe it's a canary, Sam?" I say, "Well, because it's yellow and canaries are yellow." You might raise the following skeptical hypothesis. You say, "Well, it could be a yellow warbler." Now imagine I tell you that I can't tell the difference between the two. Well, thus, I can't rule out the skeptical hypothesis you raised. And so it seems like your skeptical hypothesis gives me a reason to doubt my belief that the bird is a canary. Even if the belief turns out to be true, given this reason for doubt, I don't know that it's true. So Descartes' method says that I ought to withhold belief about its being a canary. Now, Descartes wants to take that method and apply it to the current foundations of his beliefs, so he can sort of take out everything on top as well. What is the current foundation? Well, he says, all that up to the present time I've accepted as most true and certain, I've either learned from the senses or through the senses. So the things that he usually sort of learns first, he thinks are the things that he sees, touches, hears, and then he uses that to build most of his other beliefs. So he needs to look to see if there's any reason to doubt this foundation, to doubt his senses. This leads to his first skeptical hypothesis. He says, look, sometimes the senses deceive me. Sometimes I get things wrong. I am prone to illusions. Sometimes, to the senses, things look smaller than they are. I look in the sky and the stars look small, but they're actually much bigger than the earth. A tower from far away might look round even though it's square. When it's dark out, I might think that the person approaching the bonfire I'm at is my friend, but then when they get closer, I realize it's a stranger. When driving at night, you might sometimes look at what seems like a wet spot, but it's actually dry. It's just the moonlight sort of reflecting off the surface of the road. So our senses are prone to illusions. Just Google illusions, you'll see things like this. It looks like the leaves are moving, but the image is static. To your senses, it looks like the circles behind the bars are all different colors. They're exactly the same colors. It looks like the piece on the left is bigger, but these are actually exactly the same size. It looks like the floor is sort of warped in the middle, but it's actually flat. To some people, this looks like it's a blue and black dress. To other people, it looks like a white and gold dress. You might remember this from a few years ago. So someone is perceiving that dress incorrectly. So we might use these examples of our senses getting things wrong to say, don't we have some reason then to doubt our senses? We can turn this into an illusion argument. Premise 1, sometimes my senses deceive me, as we've seen. But if my senses sometimes deceive me, then my senses could always deceive me, including right now. But if my senses could always deceive me, then I can never be certain that my sensory beliefs are true. Thus, I can never be certain that my sensory beliefs are true. But do these examples of illusions really give us reason to doubt everything the senses tell us? The answer seems to be no. The cases where our senses get things wrong seem to involve sort of non-ideal situations. So situations where the conditions for observation are poor. When the things are far away or small, when the lighting's poor, when there's a very complicated or jarring pattern of colors, etc. Also notice that in many of these cases, we can actually fix our beliefs by getting into better conditions, a better situation for our observation. So I can take those two pieces, put one on top of the other, and that's a better situation for using my senses to discern their length relative to one another. And now I see that they're equal. Or I go to the other side and I get a better angle on the floor to see that it's actually flat. Or I get better lighting conditions and I see that, oh yeah, it is black and blue. So going back to this argument, the problem with it is premise 2. The fact that my senses sometimes deceive me doesn't mean that my senses could always deceive me. Descartes himself notices this problem. He says, look, it may be that although the senses sometimes deceive us concerning things which are hardly perceptible or far away, there might be others to be met with as to which we cannot reasonably have any doubt, although we recognize them by the senses' means. So, for example, he says, there's the fact that I am here, seated by the fire, attired in a dressing gown, having this paper in my hands, and other similar beliefs. And how could I deny that these hands and body are mine? So he's saying, like, when you consider the skeptical hypothesis of illusions, that does give us reason to doubt our sensory beliefs that we form in those non-ideal circumstances. But this illusion possibility doesn't give us any reason to doubt our ideal sensory beliefs. So my belief that there's a computer screen in front of me, or that I'm wearing a white t-shirt, or I guess right now I'm actually wearing a red sweatshirt, or the belief that I have exactly 2 hands. It looks like these ideal beliefs survive. Does that mean that these provide us with a strong foundation for knowledge? Not necessarily. Surviving the case of illusions doesn't mean that those beliefs are certain to be true. Maybe we just haven't found a strong enough skeptical hypothesis yet. Maybe we just need a bigger bulldozer for demolishing those beliefs. So you believe that there's a computer or tablet or phone in front of you right now. That's an example of an ideal sensory belief. That's the best kind of belief your senses can give you. Can you think up a possible situation where you have this same sensory belief even though it's false? Descartes brings one up. He says, I must remember that I'm in the habit of sleeping. How often has it happened to me that in the night I dreamt that I found myself in this particular place, that I was dressed and seated near the fire, whilst in reality I was lying undressed in bed. So he brings up the case of dreams as examples, where someone has these apparently ideal beliefs coming from their senses, but nonetheless they are false. So we can turn this into an argument. If I know there's a computer in front of me right now, then I must know that I'm not dreaming right now. But I can't know that I'm not dreaming right now. And so I do not know that there's a computer in front of me right now. I don't even know this ideal sensory belief. So this argument is deductively valid. It's essentially using modus tollens. If A, then B, not B, therefore not A. But are the premises true? Well, why should I believe the first premise? It tells me that ruling out the possibility that we're dreaming is a necessary condition to know that there's a computer in front of me, or anything else using just my senses. Why should I believe that? This is where Descartes' method of doubt comes in. The method's related to an idea about knowledge that I think most of us intuitively accept in most contexts. Let's call it the ruling out alternatives requirement. The idea seems to be, in order to know any claim, you need to be able to rule out the alternative possibilities. Remember that canary example. In order to know that's canary, I need to be able to rule out the possibility that it's a yellow warbler instead. Descartes' method of doubt in premise 1 here is just taking this idea and generalizing it to all cases of knowledge. He's saying, in order to know that there's a computer in front of you right now, you need to be able to rule out the alternative possibilities. You want to know what? One of those alternative possibilities is that you're just dreaming the computer. All right, well, what about premise 2? Why should I think this is true? Why should I think that I can't rule out the claim that I'm dreaming? You might think, well, look, but hold on. The experiences I'm having right now feel very different than the experiences I remember usually having in dreams. So don't the clear, vivid experiences I'm having right now, don't they rule out the possibility that I'm currently in a dream? Don't they show me that I'm awake? Descartes brings this up. He says, look, at this moment, it does indeed seem to me that it's with eyes awake that I'm looking at this paper, that this head which I move is not asleep, that it's deliberately and set purpose that I extend my hand and perceive it. What happens in sleep does not appear so clear, nor so distinct as does all this. But in thinking over this, I remind myself that on many occasions, I have in sleep been deceived by similar illusions. And in dwelling carefully on this reflection, I see so manifestly that there are no certain indications by which we may clearly distinguish wakefulness from sleep that I am lost in astonishment. So Descartes is supporting his premise with the following kind of thesis. Let's call it the similarity thesis. For any waking sensory experience you have, it is possible for you to have an exactly similar sensory experience while dreaming. So even if your experiences when you're dreaming are oftentimes different than the kinds of experiences you have while awake, his claim here is just the experiences you have while awake are still experiences that you could have in a dream. You could have a very vivid, boring dream about watching a sort of lecture video about Descartes. If this is correct, if any experience you have while you're awake could also be had while dreaming, then no experience you have could rule out the claim that you're currently dreaming. According to Descartes, the dreaming possibility, it does threaten your knowledge of the physical world around you, but it doesn't threaten our knowledge of our beliefs concerning mathematics and logic. The reason why is because even if you're dreaming right now, your belief that 2 plus 3 equals 5 would still be true. Your belief that modus ponens is valid would still be true. And your belief that the 3 angles of a triangle add up to 180 degrees would still be true. Thus, you don't need to be able to rule out the possibility that you're dreaming to have knowledge about math and logic, because the possibility that you're dreaming is not an alternative possibility to these particular claims. So, do mathematical and logical beliefs then provide us with a certain and solid foundation for knowledge? Yet again, we can't be too quick here. These survive the dream hypothesis. But we need to consider the possibility that there might be an even bigger skeptical hypothesis that would give us a different reason to doubt these beliefs. Next time, we'll look at that. See you then.